The sight of Jacob's exposed genitals sends Stella reeling, her bioluminescent skin flashing a kaleidoscope of colors. She's never encountered external reproductive organs before, and the alien appendage between the human's legs both fascinates and terrifies her. Moments earlier, Stella had emerged from her crashed Talaxian scout ship, dazed but alive. The dense forest outside Seattle, Washington, was a far cry from her homeworld. As she stumbled from the wreckage, her translator device sparked and sputtered, leaving her with only fragments of Earth's languages. Park Ranger Jacob Green had been on a routine patrol when he spotted the downed craft. Approaching cautiously, weapon drawn, he found himself face to face with a being unlike any he'd ever seen. Stella's skin shimmered and pulsed with an otherworldly glow, shifting hues as she regarded him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Their first attempts at communication were a mess of gestures and broken phrases. Jacob's mind raced, torn between protocol and the unprecedented situation before him. He radioed for backup, triggering a rapid government response. Within hours, a containment team led by Dr. Elena Vasquez, a renowned xenobiologist, arrived on the scene. They quickly established a temporary research facility around the crash site, cordoning off the area from prying eyes. Jacob found himself thrust into the role of primary liaison, as Stella seemed to trust him more than the others. During the initial medical examination, cultural misunderstandings reached a fever pitch. As Dr. Vasquez directed Jacob to undress for a comparative analysis, Stella's reaction to his anatomy sent shockwaves through the research team. Her distress was palpable, her skin flashing warning colors that needed no translation. Dr. Vasquez's mind whirred with possibilities. "Fascinating," she muttered, scribbling notes furiously. "It appears Talaxian reproduction must differ significantly from our own. This could have major implications for interspecies relations." Jacob felt a conflicting mix of embarrassment, scientific curiosity, and an attraction he dared not acknowledge. He struggled to maintain his composure as Stella's gaze lingered on his exposed form, her own body responding in ways she clearly didn't understand. As the examination continued, government officials gathered in Washington, D.C., debating the implications of this first contact. They tasked Jacob with learning more about Talaxian culture and capabilities, unaware that Stella harbored secrets of her own. For Stella was no mere crash survivor. She was an advanced scout, sent to assess Earth's viability for Talaxian colonization. As she observed the humans' reactions and technological capabilities, she grappled with a growing dilemma. The warmth and compassion she'd experienced, especially from Jacob, clashed with her mission objectives. Jacob, too, found himself in uncharted territory. His growing feelings for Stella warred with professional boundaries and the taboo of interspecies attraction. Each interaction left him more conflicted, more fascinated by the alien woman who'd literally fallen into his life. As night fell on the forest, tensions mounted. Other government agencies demanded access to Stella and the crashed ship, seeing potential weapons or technological advancements to be gleaned. Dr. Vasquez worked tirelessly, certain she was on the brink of a breakthrough in understanding Talaxian biology. And high above, undetected by Earth's monitoring systems, a second Talaxian ship slipped into orbit. The stage was set for a collision of worlds, with Stella and Jacob at the heart of a looming interstellar drama. As the night deepened, the temporary research facility buzzed with activity. Floodlights illuminated the crash site, casting long shadows through the dense forest. Inside the main tent, Dr. Elena Vasquez hunched over her equipment, her eyes darting between microscopes and computer screens. "Fascinating," she murmured, adjusting the focus on a sample of Stella's blood. "The cellular structure is unlike anything I've ever seen." Jacob stood nearby, his gaze alternating between the doctor's work and Stella, who sat on an examination table. The alien skin shimmered with a soft, pulsating glow that seemed to match her breathing. "How are you feeling?" Jacob asked, taking a step closer to Stella. She tilted her head, her large iridescent eyes meeting his. "I am uncertain," she replied, her translator device struggling to convey the complexity of her emotions. "Your world is so different from mine." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her work. "Stella, I'd like to run a few more non-invasive scans, if that's all right with you. Stella nodded, her skin briefly flashing a bright blue. As Dr. Vasquez began the scan, Jacob noticed a change in Stella's demeanor. Her usual calm was replaced by a nervous energy, her skin cycling through a rapid series of colors. "Dr. Vasquez," Jacob said, pointing to Stella's shifting hues. "Is this normal?" The doctor's eyes widened. "Incredible," she breathed, grabbing a nearby tablet to record the phenomenon. "I've never seen this pattern before. Stella, are you experiencing any unusual sensations?" Stella's translator crackled as she searched for the right words. "I feel warm, tingly. It is not unpleasant, but it is unfamiliar." Dr. Vasquez's fingers flew across her tablet. "This could be related to your reproductive cycle, perhaps a state of arousal or fertility." Jacob felt his cheeks flush at the doctor's words. He found himself acutely aware of Stella's alien beauty, the way her skin seemed to glow from within. He shook his head, trying to clear the inappropriate thoughts. "I think that's enough for tonight," he said, his voice gruffer than he intended. "Stella needs rest." Dr. Vasquez nodded reluctantly. "Of course. We'll continue in the morning." As Jacob led Stella back to her designated living quarters, he couldn't help but notice how her skin seemed to pulse with warmer hues when she was near him. The air between them felt charged, filled with an unspoken tension. "Jacob," Stella said softly as they reached her door, "I am grateful for your kindness." Their eyes met, and for a moment, Jacob forgot to breathe. He opened his mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the sharp crackle of his radio. "Green, report to command immediately," a stern voice ordered. Jacob sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I have to go. Get some rest, Stella." As he walked away, he missed the longing look Stella cast in his direction, her skin shimmering with a warm, rosy glow. In the command tent, Jacob found himself face to face with a new arrival. Dr. Marcus Chen, a tall, imposing figure with piercing eyes, regarded Jacob with thinly veiled suspicion. "Ranger Green," Dr. Chen said, his tone clipped. "I understand you've been spending a significant amount of time with the alien subject." Jacob bristled at the word subject. "Her name is Stella," he corrected. "And yes, I've been acting as her liaison." Dr. Chen's eyes narrowed. "I see. Well, I'm here to oversee this project and ensure proper protocols are followed. From now on, your interactions with the alien will be limited and supervised." Jacob opened his mouth to protest, but a warning look from his superior silenced him. As he left the tent, frustration boiled inside him. How could they expect to learn from Stella if they treated her like a lab specimen? High above the Earth, undetected by the humans' primitive technology, the Talaxian ship commanded by Captain Zara maintained its vigil. The sleek vessel hung in low orbit, its advanced cloaking systems rendering it invisible to Earth's satellites. Captain Zara stood on the bridge, her bioluminescent skin a deep, thoughtful purple. "Any word from Stella?" she asked her communications officer. "Negative, Captain," came the reply. "She maintains radio silence as per mission protocols." Zara's skin flickered with concern. "Continue monitoring Earth's communications. We need to know if they've discovered her true purpose." As the Talaxian ship gathered intelligence on Earth's defenses and population centers, the delicate dance of first contact continued below. In her quarters, Stella lay awake, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts and unfamiliar emotions. Her mission, her people, her duty, all of it seemed to pale in comparison to the warmth she felt when Jacob was near. In his own bunk, Jacob tossed and turned, unable to shake the image of Stella's glowing skin and mesmerizing eyes. He knew he was walking a dangerous line, but he couldn't deny the connection he felt to the alien woman. As dawn broke over the forest, neither human nor Talaxian realized that their worlds were on a collision course, with consequences that would ripple across the stars. As dawn broke over the forest, the research facility buzzed with activity. Dr. Marcus Chen strode purposefully through the main tent, his face set in a grim expression. He approached Jacob, who was preparing for his morning check-in with Stella. "Ranger Green," Dr. Chen said, his voice clipped. "There are new protocols in place. Your interactions with the alien subject will now be limited and supervised." Jacob felt his stomach drop. "What? Why?" Security concerns, Chen replied, not meeting Jacob's eyes. We've installed surveillance cameras in her quarters, and all future sessions will be monitored. Jacob clenched his fists, frustration boiling inside him. He opened his mouth to protest, but Chen cut him off with a sharp gesture. This isn't up for discussion, Green. It's an order from the top. As Chen walked away, Jacob caught sight of Dr. Elena Vasquez hunched over her microscope, her face alight with excitement. She beckoned him over, her eyes never leaving the eyepiece. Jacob, look at this, she said, stepping aside to let him peer through the lens. Stella's blood. It's incredible. The regenerative properties are unlike anything I've ever seen. Jacob squinted at the swirling patterns of cells. What does it mean? It could revolutionize medicine, Vasquez breathed. Accelerated healing, extended lifespans. The possibilities are endless. A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the tent flap, Jacob saw a group of men in suits talking animatedly with Dr. Chen. Their voices carried words like pharmaceutical potential and military applications drifting on the morning air. Jacob's heart sank. He knew what this meant for Stella. Inside her quarters, Stella paced nervously. Her skin flickered through a kaleidoscope of colors, reflecting her inner turmoil. She could sense the growing interest in her biology, the way the human's eyes lingered on her with barely concealed curiosity and greed. A knock at the door made her jump. Jacob entered, followed closely by Dr. Chen and two armed guards. Stella, Jacob said, his voice tight. Dr. Chen has approved a supervised excursion outside the facility. Would you like to see more of Earth's natural environment? Stella's skin pulsed with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Yes, she said, her translator struggling to convey her complex emotions. I would like that very much. As they stepped out into the forest, Stella's eyes widened with wonder. She reached out to touch the rough bark of a towering pine, marveling at its texture. A butterfly fluttered past, and she gasped in delight, her skin shimmering with vibrant blues and greens. Jacob watched her, a warmth spreading through his chest. Even Dr. Chen seemed affected by her genuine joy, his stern expression softening slightly. They reached a sun-dappled clearing, wildflowers dotting the grass. Stella knelt to examine a delicate bloom when a rustling in the undergrowth made everyone freeze. Three figures emerged from the shadows, their skin glowing with the same otherworldly light as Stella's. Talaxians. Time seemed to stand still as both groups stared at each other in shock. Then chaos erupted. The security guards drew their weapons, shouting warnings. Dr. Chen stepped forward, hands raised in a placating gesture. We mean you no harm, he called out, his voice steady despite the tension thrumming through the air. Jacob moved instinctively, placing himself between Stella and the newcomers. But Stella pushed past him, her skin flashing urgent patterns of communication. Stop, she cried, her voice carrying a new authority. There is no need for violence. All eyes turned to her as she took a deep breath, her form seeming to grow taller. I must tell you the truth, she said, looking directly at Jacob. I am not merely a crash survivor. I am an advanced scout, sent to assess Earth for Talaxian colonization. Jacob felt as if the ground had dropped out from beneath him. He stared at Stella, searching her alien features for any sign of the connection he thought they'd shared. But my experiences here, Stella continued, her gaze never leaving Jacob's, have changed everything. I've seen the beauty of your world, the kindness of your people. We must find a way to coexist peacefully. The Talaxian operatives exchanged glances, clearly unsettled by this turn of events. One of them stepped forward, his skin pulsing with aggressive red tones. You betray your own kind, he hissed at Stella. In a blur of motion, the Talaxian lunged at Stella. Jacob reacted without thinking, tackling the alien to the ground. They grappled in the grass, a tangle of human and alien limbs. The other Talaxians moved to assist their comrade, but the security guards intercepted them. Dr. Chen shouted for calm, his words lost in the melee. Suddenly, a cry of pain cut through the chaos. One of the Talaxians clutched his arm, green blood seeping between his fingers. The fighting stopped as abruptly as it had begun. Stella rushed to the injured Talaxian's side, her hands glowing with an inner light. She placed them gently on his wound, and before everyone's astonished eyes, the gash began to close. Remarkable, Dr. Chen murmured, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding the gravity of the situation. As the tension ebbed, Jacob found himself standing shoulder to shoulder with the Talaxian he'd fought. They exchanged a look of grudging respect. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. "I believe," he said slowly, "that we all have much to discuss. I propose we return to the facility and approach this situation with open minds and cool heads." The Talaxians conferred briefly, their skin flickering with rapid patterns of communication. Finally, they nodded their assent. As the mixed group began the trek back to the research facility, Jacob fell into step beside Stella. 1,000 questions burned on his tongue, but he remained silent, sensing that now was not the time for words. Stella's hand brushed against his, her touch sending a jolt of electricity through him. Despite everything, the connection between them remained, perhaps even stronger for having weathered this storm. They emerged from the forest to see the research facility in an uproar. Alarms blared as security personnel swarmed towards them, weapons drawn. Jacob tensed, knowing that the next few moments would shape the future of human-Talaxian relations. As they approached the facility's perimeter, Stella's skin began to pulse with a steady, calming blue light. She stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next, with Jacob by her side. Sighed. The tension in the air was palpable as they approached the facility's perimeter. Suddenly, alarms blared, piercing the relative quiet of the forest. Security personnel swarmed towards them, weapons raised and ready. Jacob instinctively moved closer to Stella, his body tense and ready for action. The Talaxian operatives bristled, their skin flickering with aggressive patterns. Dr. Chen raised his hands, trying to defuse the situation. "Hold your fire," a familiar voice called out. Dr. Elena Vasquez emerged from the main building, her lab coat fluttering behind her as she ran. She skidded to a stop in front of the security team, her chest heaving. "Stand down immediately." The guards hesitated, looking between Dr. Vasquez and the alien intruders. Slowly, they lowered their weapons, though their fingers remained close to the triggers. Dr. Vasquez turned to face the mixed group, her eyes widening as she took in the sight of the additional Talaxians. "Dr. Chen, what's going on here?" Chen quickly briefed her on the events in the forest, his words tumbling out in a rush. Vasquez listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. When he finished, she nodded decisively. "All right, everyone inside. We need to discuss this in a secure location." She gestured towards the main building. "Follow me to the conference room." As they walked, Jacob noticed Stella's skin pulsing with rapid patterns of blue and green. He longed to reach out and comfort her, but held back, acutely aware of the eyes watching their every move. The conference room was a stark, utilitarian space. A large oval table dominated the center, surrounded by uncomfortable-looking chairs. Dr. Vasquez took her place at the head of the table, while the others arranged themselves cautiously around its perimeter. "Now," Vasquez began, her voice calm but authoritative, "I think it's time we all laid our cards on the table. Stella, perhaps you'd like to start?" Stella's skin flashed a deep purple before settling into a steady, pulsing blue. She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting Jacob's briefly before scanning the room. "I have not been entirely truthful about my presence here," she began, her translator struggling to convey the complexity of her emotions. "I am an advanced scout, sent to assess Earth for Talaxian colonization." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Jacob felt as if he'd been punched in the gut, his mind blown with the implications of her words. Stella continued, her voice growing stronger. "My people face a crisis. Our homeworld is dying, resources depleted, population straining at the seams. Earth was identified as a potential new home." Her gaze softened as she looked at Jacob. "But my experiences here have changed everything. I've seen the beauty of this world, the kindness of its people. We must find a way to coexist peacefully." One of the Talaxian operatives, his skin flashing angry red, slammed his hand on the table. "You betray our people, Stella. Millions are counting on us." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward, her eyes bright with interest. "Perhaps there's a way we can help each other. Stella, the regenerative properties of your blood are unlike anything we've ever seen. If we could study it further, develop its potential, it could revolutionize medicine for both our species." The room erupted into heated discussion, voices overlapping as humans and Talaxians debated the possibilities. Jacob watched Stella, noticing the way her skin shimmered with hope and apprehension. Suddenly, a shrill beep cut through the chaos. One of the Talaxian operatives pulled out a small device, his expression grave as he read the message displayed on its surface. "It's Captain Zara," he announced, his voice tight with tension. "She's grown impatient with our lack of progress. She's planning to begin a small-scale invasion to secure a foothold on Earth. We have 1 hour before she launches the attack." The room fell silent, the weight of the announcement settling heavily on everyone present. Jacob's mind raced, searching for a solution. He turned to Stella, an idea forming. "Your ability to communicate with your people," he said urgently. "Could you use it to convince Captain Zara to reconsider?" Dr. Chen nodded, building on the idea. "We could establish a direct communication link with the Talaxian ship. If we work together, we might be able to negotiate a peaceful resolution." As the group sprang into action, preparing for the crucial communication, Jacob pulled Stella aside. They found a quiet corner, away from the frantic activity. "Stella," he began, his voice low and intense, "I need to know. Everything we've shared, everything we've been through, was it all part of your mission?" Stella's skin pulsed with a warm, rosy glow. She reached out, her fingers intertwining with his. "No, Jacob. What I feel for you is real. It's more real than anything I've ever known." Their eyes met, and in that moment, the rest of the world fell away. Jacob pulled Stella close, their bodies fitting together as if they were made for each other. As their lips met, Jacob felt a jolt of electricity course through him. Stella's skin shimmered with vibrant colors, her bioluminescence responding to the intensity of their connection. "Jacob! Stella!" Dr. Vasquez's urgent voice broke through their moment of intimacy. "We're ready to establish the link. We need you in the conference room now." They broke apart, breathing heavily. Jacob squeezed Stella's hand, drawing strength from her touch. "Let's go save the world," he said, managing a small smile. As they hurried back to the conference room, Jacob's mind raced with the enormity of what lay ahead. The future of 2 species hung in the balance, and he found himself at the center of it all, with an alien woman he was falling in love with by his side. The communication link crackled to life, and Captain Zara's stern face filled the view screen. Stella stepped forward, her skin displaying a mesmerizing pattern of colors. As she began to speak, Jacob silently willed her words to reach the Talaxian captain's heart. But before Stella could finish her impassioned plea, alarms blared once again. Dr. Chen's face paled as he looked at the facility's sensor readings. "Multiple unidentified objects entering Earth's atmosphere," he announced, his voice tight with fear. "They appear to be Talaxian in origin." Jacob's heart sank as he realized the enormity of the situation. The advanced scouts from Captain Zara's ship had arrived, and time was running out. As chaos erupted around them, he met Stella's eyes, seeing his own commitment reflected in their alien depths. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Together. The tension in the air was palpable as alarms continued to blare throughout the facility. Suddenly, Dr. Vasquez's voice cut through the chaos. "Initiating emergency protocols. We're going into lockdown." Her fingers flew across a nearby control panel, and heavy metal shutters began to descend over the windows. "Everyone to the command center, now!" she ordered, her voice leaving no room for argument. As they raced through the corridors, Jacob could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced at Stella, her skin pulsing with rapid patterns of anxiety and purpose. The Talaxian operatives followed close behind, their earlier hostility seemingly forgotten in the face of this new threat. They burst into the command center, a room filled with banks of monitors and sophisticated equipment. Dr. Chen immediately took up position at one of the main consoles, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. "I'm picking up 5 distinct heat signatures," he reported, his voice tense. "They're positioning themselves around the facility." Jacob leaned in, squinting at the thermal imaging display. The Talaxian ships appeared as ghostly outlines, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. "How did you manage to detect them?" one of the Talaxian operatives asked, his tone a mixture of surprise and grudging respect. Dr. Vasquez allowed herself a small, grim smile. We've been studying Stella's ship. It's amazing what you can learn when you have a willing subject. Before anyone could respond, a new alert flashed across the main screen. Dr. Chen's face paled as he read the incoming message. It's Captain Zara. She's demanding we surrender and hand over all our research on Talaxian biology. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. Jacob's mind raced, searching for a solution. He looked at Stella, her alien features etched with concern, and suddenly an idea sparked to life. "Stella," he said urgently, "your bioluminescent communication. Could we use it to send a message to all the ships at once?" Dr. Chen's eyes widened as he caught on to Jacob's train of thought. "If we could amplify the signal using our communication array," he muttered, already turning to his console to run calculations. "It's risky," Dr. Vasquez cautioned, "but it might be our best shot at averting a conflict." Stella nodded, her skin pulsing with a determined blue glow. "I'm willing to try." The next few minutes were a flurry of activity as the team worked to modify the facility's communication array. Dr. Chen and Dr. Vasquez huddled over the equipment, making rapid adjustments and calculations. The Talaxian operatives, after a moment's hesitation, offered their assistance, providing crucial insights into their own technology. Finally, everything was in place. Stella stood at the center of a hastily constructed array of sensors and transmitters, her alien physiology now literally the heart of their makeshift communication system. "Are you ready?" Jacob asked softly, standing close by her side. Stella's skin rippled with a complex pattern of colors. "I am," she replied, her voice steady despite the uncertainty in her eyes. Dr. Vasquez initiated the sequence, and immediately Stella's body began to glow with an intensity Jacob had never seen before. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed and swirled, growing brighter and more complex with each passing second. Suddenly, the facility's power systems began to fluctuate. Lights flickered and alarms blared as the energy output from Stella's amplified signal threatened to overload their systems. "We're losing stability," Dr. Chen shouted over the noise. "The signal's too strong." Without thinking, Jacob reached out and grasped Stella's hand. The moment their skin made contact, a strange calm settled over the room. The alarms fell silent and the lights steadied. Stella's glow intensified, but now it felt controlled, purposeful. On the monitors, they watched in awe as the signal expanded, enveloping not just the scout ships and Captain Zara's vessel, but reaching far beyond into the depths of space. For several long moments, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the heat signatures of the Talaxian ships began to fade. "They're powering down their weapons," one of the operatives breathed, his voice filled with disbelief. Before they could celebrate, a new transmission crackled to life. Captain Zara's face appeared on the main screen, her expression a mixture of confusion and awe. We wish to open diplomatic channels," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "There is much we need to discuss." As the immediate threat subsided, Jacob became acutely aware that he was still holding Stella's hand. He turned to look at her, only to find her swaying on her feet, her skin pale and her glow dimmed. "Stella!" he cried, catching her as she stumbled. Dr. Vasquez rushed over, medical scanner in hand. As she ran the device over Stella's form, her eyes widened in surprise. "Her physiology, it's changing. It's as if the signal triggered some kind of adaptive response." Before they could fully process this new development, the command center door slid open, revealing a stern-faced woman flanked by security personnel. "I am Ambassador Lyra," she announced, her gaze sweeping the room. "I've been sent from Talax to oversee negotiations with Earth." Her eyes landed on Jacob and Stella, still holding hands. "It seems I've arrived at a most interesting moment." Jacob looked from the ambassador to Stella, then to the busy screens showing incoming transmissions from governments around the world. He realized that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, not just for him and Stella, but for both their species. As Stella squeezed his hand weakly, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Together. The tension in the air was palpable as they faced the enormity of the situation unfolding before them. In the days that followed, the research facility transformed into a hub of unprecedented human-Talaxian cooperation. Ambassador Lyra, her stern demeanor softened by the gravity of recent events, took charge of negotiations with Earth's hastily assembled United Nations Special Committee. Her arrival brought a new dynamic to the delicate balance of interspecies relations. Dr. Vasquez, her eyes bright with scientific curiosity, intensified her study of Stella's biological changes. "The cellular modifications are unlike anything I've ever seen," she murmured, peering into a microscope. "It's as if her very DNA is rewriting itself." Dr. Chen nodded, his fingers flying across a keyboard as he input data. "The adaptation seems to be making her more compatible with human biology. It's fascinating." Jacob watched from across the lab, his heart racing as he considered the implications. Stella sat nearby, her skin pulsing with a soft, pensive glow. Their eyes met, and he felt a familiar jolt of connection. Ambassador Lyra's voice cut through the quiet hum of equipment. "Dr. Vasquez, your findings are intriguing. I've authorized a team of Talaxian scientists to join your research efforts." As if on cue, the lab door slid open, revealing a group of Talaxians led by a tall, imposing figure. "I am Dr. Zorn," he announced, his skin flickering with patterns of green and blue. "I look forward to collaborating on this groundbreaking work." The atmosphere in the lab shifted immediately. Dr. Vasquez's welcoming smile faltered as Dr. Zorn strode past her, heading straight for Stella. "Fascinating," he muttered, producing a handheld scanner and running it over her body without asking permission. Jacob tensed, stepping forward. "Hey, maybe we should—" "Jacob!" Dr. Vasquez's hand on his arm stopped him. She shook her head slightly, her expression tight. "We need to work together." As the days passed, the tension between the human and Talaxian research teams grew. Dr. Zorn's methods often clashed with those of Dr. Vasquez and Dr. Chen, leading to heated debates that echoed through the facility's corridors. Meanwhile, Jacob and Stella found themselves at the center of both scientific curiosity and political scrutiny. Government officials, their faces etched with concern, implemented strict protocols governing their interactions. "It's for your own safety," a stern-faced bureaucrat explained, handing them each a thick binder of rules, "and for the safety of both our species." Despite these restrictions, Jacob and Stella managed to spend time together under the guise of cultural exchange sessions. During one such meeting, Stella suddenly gasped, her skin flaring with vibrant colors. "Jacob," she whispered, her eyes wide, "I can sense you, your emotions, your—" She trailed off, her cheeks flushing a deep purple. Dr. Chen, monitoring the session, leaned forward with interest. "It seems Stella's changing physiology has granted her the ability to perceive human pheromones. This is an incredible development." As Jacob and Stella grappled with this new layer of intimacy, Dr. Zorn approached Ambassador Lyra with a controversial proposal. "We need to accelerate Stella's adaptation," he argued, his skin pulsing with intensity. "I suggest exposing her to concentrated doses of human genetic material, specifically from Jacob." The ethical implications of this proposal sparked fierce debates among the scientific team and government officials. Dr. Vasquez vehemently opposed the idea, while Dr. Zorn pushed harder, citing the potential benefits to both species. The decision was abruptly taken out of their hands when Captain Zara's ship detected an incoming transmission from the Talaxian homeworld. The message, played over the facility's speakers, sent a chill through everyone present. "A larger Talaxian fleet is en route to Earth," Captain Zara reported, her voice tight with tension. "They were dispatched before our peaceful resolution was achieved." Ambassador Lyra sprang into action, working tirelessly with Earth leaders to formulate a plan. "We need to use the modified communication array," she insisted. "Combined with Stella's unique abilities, we can broadcast a message of peace to the incoming fleet." Dr. Zorn seized the opportunity to push his agenda. "Stella's abilities may not be powerful enough without further adaptation," he argued. "We must implement my proposed experiment immediately. It's our only chance to ensure the broadcast's success." Faced with the threat of an incoming Talaxian fleet, Earth's leaders reluctantly agreed to the procedure. Jacob, his heart heavy with the weight of responsibility, volunteered to provide the genetic material. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. He turned to Stella, who nodded solemnly, her skin shimmering with a mix of anxiety and persistence. As preparations for the experiment began, tensions within the facility reached a boiling point. Dr. Vasquez and Dr. Chen worked frantically to modify the procedure, aiming to minimize risks to Stella. Dr. Zorn, however, pushed for a more aggressive approach, leading to shouting matches that echoed through the labs. Outside, news of the incoming Talaxian fleet leaked to the public. Panic spread like wildfire, with anti-alien protests erupting in major cities around the world. The pressure on the research team intensified, the weight of two worlds resting on their shoulders. Finally, the day of the experiment arrived. Jacob and Stella stood before the specially prepared chamber, their hands intertwined. Dr. Vasquez approached, her face etched with concern. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before they could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the intercom, panic evident in his tone. "Multiple objects entering Earth's atmosphere. The Talaxian fleet, they're here!" In the chaos that erupted, Jacob and Stella found themselves ushered into the experiment chamber. As the doors sealed shut behind them, locking them in, they exchanged a look of grit and fear. The procedure was already underway, their fates now irreversibly entwined with the future of both their species. Outside the chamber, scientists and diplomats scrambled to respond to the unfolding crisis. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance as the Talaxian ships descended from the sky, their intentions unknown. Unknown as they loomed ever closer to Earth's atmosphere. Inside the experiment chamber, Jacob and Stella stood frozen, their hands clasped tightly as the doors sealed shut with a hiss. The adaptation procedure had already begun, a soft whir of machinery filling the air around them. Stella's skin pulsed with an otherworldly glow, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and commitment. Dr. Vasquez's voice crackled over the intercom, strained but professional. "Jacob, Stella, we're adjusting the parameters to accelerate the process. We don't have much time." Outside the chamber, chaos reigned. Dr. Chen's fingers flew across his console, making rapid adjustments to the experiment protocols. Dr. Zorn loomed over him, his Talaxian skin flashing with agitated patterns. "Push it further," Dr. Zorn demanded, his voice sharp. "We need to maximize her potential." Dr. Vasquez whirled on him, her eyes flashing. "We can't risk Stella's safety. We'll find a balance." Inside the chamber, Jacob felt a strange tingling sensation spreading through his body. He looked down at his hand, still intertwined with Stella's, and gasped. Her skin was changing, the texture morphing to become more human-like while retaining its bioluminescent properties. "Stella," he whispered, "are you okay?" She turned to him, her eyes now a swirling mix of Talaxian and human features. I feel different. Everything is so clear, so intense." Suddenly, Jacob's mind exploded with sensation. Images, thoughts, and emotions that weren't his own flooded his consciousness. He staggered, overwhelmed by the influx of alien perceptions. "Dr. Vasquez," he called out, his voice strained. "Something's happening. I can feel Stella's thoughts." Dr. Vasquez's eyes widened as she studied the readings on her monitor. "Incredible," she breathed. "They've formed a mental link. This could be the key." As the scientist worked frantically to modify the communication array, Ambassador Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral Czar's fleet has entered low Earth orbit. We're out of time." Dr. Vasquez made a split-second decision. "We're broadcasting now. Jacob, Stella, focus on peace. Show them what we can achieve together." Jacob closed his eyes, concentrating on the flood of shared consciousness between him and Stella. He felt her alienness, her uniqueness, but also the profound connection they shared. Together, they projected a vision of harmony, of two species working as one. The broadcast surged outward, carried by the modified array. In the command center of the lead Talaxian ship, Admiral Czar froze, his hand hovering over the controls to initiate invasion protocols. The message washed over him, a tide of emotion and understanding unlike anything he'd ever experienced. "Stand down," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. "All ships, stand down." Back in the research facility, Jacob and Stella emerged from the chamber, changed forever. Stella's new form was a perfect blend of Talaxian and human features. Her skin still pulsing with bioluminescence, but now with a texture closer to human skin. Jacob felt the echo of her thoughts in his mind, a constant, comforting presence. As the immediate crisis passed, the implications of what had occurred began to sink in. Dr. Vasquez approached the pair, her face a mix of awe and concern. "We have a lot to discuss," she said softly. "Your bond. It's unprecedented." Ambassador Lyra strode into the lab, her posture rigid but her eyes bright with excitement. "Admiral Czar is requesting a meeting. He wants to discuss the possibility of a joint research initiative." The lab buzzed with activity as human and Talaxian scientists alike pored over the data from the experiment. Dr. Zorn, his earlier aggression tempered by curiosity, examined Stella with newfound respect. "The potential applications are staggering," he murmured. "We could revolutionize interspecies communication, medicine, perhaps even space travel." As the day wore on, Jacob and Stella found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Scientists asked endless questions, diplomats sought their insights, and military officials eyed them with a mixture of suspicion and hope. Through it all, their mental link remained, a private sanctuary amidst the chaos. What happens now? Stella's thought drifted into Jacob's mind. He squeezed her hand, marveling at how natural it felt, despite her altered physiology. "I don't know," he thought back, "but whatever comes next, we'll face it together." As night fell, a new challenge emerged. Senator Marcus Graves appeared on the facility's main screen, his face set in grim lines. "This is an outrage," he thundered. "We cannot allow unrestricted alien integration into our society. There must be regulations, safeguards." Ambassador Lyra's expression hardened as she listened to the senator's tirade. She turned to Jacob and Stella, her eyes filled with drive. "It seems our work is just the beginning," she said quietly. "Are you ready to help us navigate these new waters?" Jacob and Stella exchanged a glance, their shared consciousness humming with a mix of trepidation and drive. They nodded in unison, prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead in this new era of human-Talaxian relations. Jacob and Stella found themselves at the forefront of a new era. Their unique bond, forged through shared experiences and the experimental procedure, became a symbol of hope for both species. In the days following the averted crisis, the research facility buzzed with renewed energy. Human and Talaxian scientists worked side by side, their earlier conflicts replaced by a shared sense of purpose. Dr. Vasquez and Dr. Zorn, once at odds, now collaborated closely, analyzing the data from Jacob and Stella's transformation. "The implications are staggering," Dr. Vasquez mused, her eyes bright with excitement as she pored over holographic displays. "Their neural patterns have synchronized in ways we never thought possible." Dr. Zorn nodded, his skin pulsing with thoughtful patterns. "It's not just biological. The cultural exchange potential is enormous." As the joint human-Talaxian research initiative gained momentum, Jacob and Stella's relationship continued to evolve. Their shared mental link deepened, allowing them to communicate without words, to feel each other's emotions as if they were their own. One evening, as they walked through the facility's newly established botanical garden, Jacob felt a surge of warmth and affection through their bond. He turned to Stella, marveling at how her features had settled into a perfect blend of human and Talaxian. "I never imagined this," he said softly, reaching out to touch her luminescent skin. "When we first met, I was so overwhelmed by our differences. And now," Stella's skin rippled with patterns of joy and love. "Now we're more alike than different," she finished, her voice a melody of both human and Talaxian tones. Their moment of peace was interrupted by Ambassador Lyra, who approached with a grim expression. "Jacob, Stella, we have a situation." Inside the facility's command center, they watched as Senator Marcus Graves addressed the world on multiple screens. His face was set in harsh lines as he spoke. "The unchecked integration of aliens into our society poses an unprecedented threat," Graves declared, his voice thundering through the speakers. "We must act now to protect our way of life, our very humanity." Ambassador Lyra's expression tightened. He's proposing a bill to severely restrict human-Talaxian interactions. If it passes, it could undo everything we've accomplished. Jacob felt a surge of anger and defiance through his link with Stella. He squeezed her hand, their thoughts aligning without a word spoken. "We can't let that happen," Jacob said firmly. Stella nodded, her skin pulsing with drive. "We need to show them what's possible when our species work together." Their commitment was tested further when Captain Zara entered, her face etched with concern. "We've received a transmission from the Talaxian homeworld," she reported. "Council Elder Vex is rallying support to recall all Talaxians from Earth." The news sent a shockwave through the room. Dr. Zorn's skin flashed with patterns of distress. "If we're forced to leave, years of research will be lost. The advancements we could make together—" Jacob and Stella exchanged a long look, their shared consciousness humming with purpose. In that moment, they made a decision that would change the course of human-Talaxian relations forever. "We'll do it," Jacob announced, his voice steady. "We'll show them what's possible." Stella's skin glowed with affirmation. "A public bonding ceremony," she added, "combining human and Talaxian traditions." Ambassador Lyra's eyes widened. "Are you sure? The political implications are exactly why we need to do this," Jacob finished. "We'll show both our peoples that we can come together, that our differences make us stronger." As word of their decision spread, reactions were swift and polarized. Supporters of interspecies cooperation hailed it as a brave step forward, while others decried it as a threat to both human and Talaxian cultures. Preparations for the ceremony began immediately. The research facility's central atrium was transformed into a space that honored both human and Talaxian aesthetics. Crystal structures pulsed with soft bioluminescence, while traditional human decorations added a familiar touch. Security measures were increased as crowds gathered outside the facility. Human and Talaxian security forces worked in tandem, their earlier mistrust replaced by professional respect. On the day of the ceremony, Jacob stood before a mirror, adjusting his suit. He could feel Stella's nervous excitement through their bond, a perfect mirror of his own emotions. Dr. Vasquez entered the room, her face a mix of pride and concern. "Are you ready for this?" she asked softly. Jacob took a deep breath, feeling Stella's reassurance wash over him. "More ready than I've ever been for anything in my life." As he stepped out to take his place for the ceremony, Jacob caught sight of the diverse crowd gathered to witness this historic moment. Humans and Talaxians sat side by side, their faces reflecting a range of emotions from curiosity to hope to suspicion. Jacob's heart swelled as Stella appeared, her form radiant in a gown that shimmered with both human and Talaxian design elements. As she approached, her skin began to glow with an intensity he had never seen before, patterns of love and commitment rippling across her body. They joined hands, their shared consciousness resonating with the significance of the moment. As they began to exchange their vows, combining human words of commitment with Talaxian gestures of unity, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Suddenly, a commotion erupted at the back of the atrium. A group of humans and Talaxians, their faces contorted with anger, pushed their way forward. "Stop this abomination!" one of them shouted, raising a weapon. In that instant, as security forces moved to intercept the attackers, something extraordinary happened. The intensity of Jacob and Stella's emotional connection, amplified by the stress of the moment, created a powerful empathic field that washed over the entire gathering. For a brief, breathtaking moment, every being in the room, human and Talaxian alike, experienced a profound sense of unity. They felt each other's fears, hopes, and the deep underlying desire for connection that transcended species. The would-be attackers froze, their weapons clattering to the ground as they were overwhelmed by the shared consciousness. Gasps of awe and wonder filled the air as the empathic wave rippled outward, touching everyone present. As the moment passed, a stunned silence fell over the gathering. Jacob and Stella stood at the center, their hands still clasped, their skin glowing with the after-effects of the empathic event. Ambassador Lyra was the first to break the silence, her voice thick with emotion. "I think," she said slowly, "we've just witnessed the beginning of a new chapter in human-Talaxian relations." As the implications of what had occurred began to sink in, Jacob and Stella knew that their journey was a long way to go. The path ahead would be challenging, but in that moment, surrounded by humans and Talaxians united in a shared experience of understanding, they felt ready to face whatever came next. The ceremony concluded amidst an atmosphere of newfound unity, but the true work of bridging their two worlds had only just begun.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.